month an abomination was born. And that triggered me into a flashback of all of the things that I hate about palette designs. So if you want a very sassy and salty video about all of the design things that I hate, skip the intro because that's what you're gonna get. Hello beautiful people, hi, my name is Mia and this is my virtual vanity, a place where we both love makeup and we are quite critical of it. If there is a thing that makes me be so critical about makeup is poor design. So today I want to talk about palette design sins and tragedies. Yes, like the Panic at the Disco song. If you don't know that song, you are either too young or you have absolutely no musical culture where it truly matters, and that is the glorious emo days of the early 2000s. Okay, so let's talk about some design things that I absolutely fucking loathe, and I'm gonna talk about both about how things are arranged and how things look. So the first sin and tragedy that I want to talk about is size queens, and no, not the porn category, but rather the palettes that feel the need to be so fucking huge that they almost give you decision anxiety. I'm talking about the 35, 40, 50, 100 and something pan palettes that seem to have the same fucking shade family repeated over and over again, like some sort of makeup Groundhog's Day, where you choose whichever shade you want and it still ends up looking like it's the same. It's just an excess. They are tricking you into being like, oh my god, so much value for my money. But let me tell you, the bigger the palette, the less the quality. It's not about the size, it's about the motion of the ocean, and that's true for makeup too. Big isn't always better, specifically when you've got so many shades that are repeats, and when the palette gets so big that it's fucking cumbersome. Like, I don't want a palette that I have to put up on a goddamn easel to work with. Likewise, I feel that the size queens palettes also suffer from a second sin, and that is trying to be everything at once and a lack of curation. What I mean by that is that they try to offer you every shade under the sun, or at least the impression that they are giving you every shade under the sun, without being curated enough for you to actually find them useful. Looking at you, Morphe, and your 50 shades of brown that are exactly the fucking same. And believe me, I have nothing against shades of brown, but I would like them to be different enough in the pans as to each have a distinct role in a makeup look. Because if you have two shades that look exactly the same when you put them on your lid, you've got clutter, you've got duplicates. And as much as you like to think that it's such good value for the money, they're just giving you two of the same instead of giving you more variety. Speaking of size, the third thing that I absolutely hate is bulky packaging. For example, I went to the Nyx store a couple of days ago and I was browsing and I saw these sugar trip palettes. And you look at them in the photo online and you're like, yeah, okay, maybe too much space between the pans, but it's not that bad. And then you go into the store and you see these fucking 9 pans put into literal storage bins. Like, what were they absolutely thinking? They are boxes, they're this thick. Extra thin! So, I am so tempted to make a separate That's What She Said clip and put it in between every time that it could possibly be said, but then it would get annoyingly often in this video, but still the temptation is there and I'm like, am I 12 or anything? What's up? Still, bulky packaging, it's a needless waste of space and materials. Why would you need such bulky packaging? And bulky packaging, also that fucking abomination that I was talking about in the intro, that's the Casey Holmes and Physicians Formula collab. What the fuck is up with this? I mean, you've got 4 eyeshadows, 3 face products, and in the same packaging you've got a lipstick and a perfume. For For what? Sell them in a set. Why do they need to be in the same location as those goddamn powders? Why are those eyeshadows so little when you could have just made the pan larger so they don't look just thrown in there? It's just awful design all around, which brings me to the fourth I think. Bad layout. I hate it when things are in... I like my palettes to be like a perfect game of Tetris. Maybe with a bit of space here and there, but overall I want all of the pieces to fit in nicely, be properly aligned, have proper kerning, so to say. I do not like it when my shadows are thrown haphazardly in all matters of configurations as if I'm trying to decipher some old cuneiform tablet to do my makeup. This Physicians Formula 1 is a perfect example. Then another example of ugly ass arrangement is the Dose of Colors Treasure Chest, I believe it was. God, this palette arrangement gives me anxiety. I get that they wanted this to look like a treasure chest, but you could have made it look like a treasure chest with pans that were like in the same lattice. Let me show you a drawing so you know what I mean. So maybe something like this, which again isn't ideal, but it would definitely waste a lot less space and it would actually look like a lot of jewels thrown haphazardly in a chest as opposed to rectangles thrown into the void, and I keep staring at the void and the void stares back at me and it gives me anxiety. Likewise, fifth pet peeve, different sized and shaped pans. Now this relates to my wish for order. Not necessarily law and order, but just maybe order. For example, let's talk about the Kristen Lian and Urban Decay palette. You've got square pans, you've got circle pans, and you've got rectangle pans, and you've got me saying what the fuck. I do not understand how this was supposed to look like a kaleidoscope in any way, shape, or form, because kaleidoscopes are quite symmetrical. Really, this is anything but symmetrical. It's just plain ugly. I do not get the arrangement of this. I do not want to get it. It just wastes so much space in both the plastic that gets between the pans and the packaging itself, when you could just optimize the way you settle things into the pans to have as little packaging as possible, as little space wasted as possible in both the packaging itself and where I put it in my vanity. That thing is twice as small if you depot it from what I've seen. It's ridiculous. But another thing that I also hate, no space at all between the pans. Maybelline is very guilty of this. To me, it just looks a lot like kids' makeup. Not only that, but I just feel like if the shadows are at the very least powdery, it would get very messy very quickly. And I hate it when everything gets messy just because I use one goddamn shade. I obsessively clean out the edges of my makeup palettes because I honestly dislike the messy look. Speaking of messy, who the fuck thought it would be a good idea to put cream and powders next to each other? I see a lot of high-end brands doing this where they're like, oh, you are such a sophisticated, busy woman of class and culture, so we are going to give you your eyeshadow and lipstick in one lady, tips Fedora. And I'm like, could you at least put like a little plastic thingy on top so the shadow powder doesn't get into the lipsticks? Because that's nasty. Like, put them together if you really want to, but put them in such a way that the creams are protected from the powder fallout, if any. And even so, just keep them protected in case anything happens to the powders. Let's talk now a bit about color. And I've got a couple of sins and tragedies in this category. First of all is no color story. So it's either a rainbow palette or the most generic basic neutral palette that you could ever think of. What I want is a curated color story, be it neutrals or rainbow palettes, or very colorful palettes. Good example of color stories would be, for neutrals, the Brown Sugar by Colourpop. For rainbow palettes, I feel it's much harder. I think you have to play with textures to really get a variation. You can make a colorful eyeshadow palette without it being a rainbow palette. You can choose 3 or 4 colors, you can choose just 2, you can choose 3. You can do a mix of pastels and neons and mid-tone colors. Like, you can do a lot of things without it being a rainbow palette that has the same tone all over. And then for colorful palettes, well, you've got the whole rainbow at your disposal. You could do so many things. For example, Blush Tribe, I believe, does interesting color stories. Juvia's Place does interesting color stories for both mattes and the neutrals. Anastasia Beverly Hills, I feel, managed to combine neutrals and colors in such a way that everybody somehow ends up loving their shit. I believe that there is so much more to be done. What I just want is a bit of thought put behind the colors that you put in your palettes, which relates to, are we at the 7th point? I feel that we are at the 7th point. 7th point, non-inclusivity. And what I mean is, do not say that your palette is inclusive when you do not go darker than medium brown, because those shades will not show up on people that are darker than a medium brown. I mean, it is very annoying when I see a palette that has the illusion of depth, but actually everything looks ashy. And what that tells me is that the formula and pigmentation is so poorly thought of that it needs a white base to work on. Pigment cannot work on its own and stand out on its own against the skin. It needs a white base. And I'm like, why the fuck should I give you a white base? Did I not pay full price for you? Do you not expect people to pay full price? Fucking give us pigment. Give us pigment. Speaking of colors, I also hate a lack of depth and color contrast unless it is specifically designed to be a companion palette. Because if you do not have depth and color contrast, you cannot create depth or contrast in your eyeshadow looks, which means that it limits you to the amount of looks you can do. I'm not saying every palette should have a bone shade or a black or whatever. Just have enough contrast between the shades that you offer so that you can create a look that is not just one tonality across the board. But as I said, unless the palette is designed as a companion palette or a monochrome palette or a palette that just wants to specifically not cater to that. Okay, and my last pet peeve is glitter overspray. Don't get me wrong, I like glitter, but I want my glitter to be consistent. Do not sell me a palette and tell me that it has a glitter shade in it when it's just an overspray. That's just deceiving. The makeup palette equivalent of take her swimming on the first date. Do not do this shit to me. I want my glitter top to bottom. Not to mention that it is so deceiving, because you are basically telling me that you're selling me something and I'm paying for it, and then I get home, I use it 2 times and I'm like, well, excuse you for catfishing me. Okay guys, these basically were all of my pet peeves, all of the things that I consider sins and tragedies in palette design. Well, actually I might have more, but none come in mind right now. So this is it. Maybe I'll do a second part of this video if more come to mind. I don't know, we'll see. Life is grand and beautiful and all of the opportunities are offered towards me, whatever. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know what annoys you the most about makeup palettes. I would love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, evening, morning, whatever it is where you're from. Bye.